You are standing at a cosmic crossroads where the desire for worldly conquest collides violently with the fire of spiritual purification. This is the extreme, unrelenting tension of Vishaka, a celestial space defined by its absolute refusal to compromise.
Yes.
Just listen closely for a moment to the space around us. You can hear the rustle of heavy old book pages turning just a few tables away. Notice the delicate clink of a porcelain teacup settling against its saucer, and breathe in that grounding, earthy smell of herbal tea steeping right here in this quiet, wood-paneled room.
It really sets the tone, doesn't it?
It does. We are immersed in the timeless atmosphere of Cafe Karma International to map out this exact intersection of energies. Our mission today is a deep dive into the heavenly level of the sources provided on the Nakshatra Vishaka. We are unpacking the intense astronomy, the mythology, and the profound psychological architecture of a very specific critical cosmic junction.
It is a junction that absolutely demands your full attention. Because, even if we are discussing a celestial space located hundreds of light years away, this specific energy maps out the ultimate human inflection point.
Right.
This represents the exact moment in your life where your ambition to conquer the external world is forced to reconcile with the profound burning necessity to transform your internal world.
Which is incredibly jarring.
It is. It is the definitive crossroads where you are forced to decide what actually matters when all the superficial layers are just stripped away.
I want to start by locating exactly where this happens in the sky, because the astronomical positioning sets the stage for everything else. In the zodiac, Vishaka spans a highly specific area. It begins at 20 degrees Libra, and it stretches across the border to end at 3 degrees and 20 minutes of Scorpio.
And that exact placement, that bridging across those two signs, is the key to the whole psychological profile we're looking at.
Because it's a border cross.
Exactly. Look at the names given to this space in the ancient texts. The primary name, Vishaka, translates directly to the forked, or the branched one. It is frequently referred to as the star of purpose.
Star of purpose, yeah.
But it also carries a fascinating alternative name, which is Radha. And that translates to the delightful or the dutiful. When you put those together, you start to see a very particular type of person.
A very driven person.
Highly driven. The concept of Radha implies an unflinching, single-minded dedication to a specific target. It is absolute, unwavering devotion to a goal.
Right, and this is the crucial part. It is devotion happening at a fork in the road. You have this intense, single-minded drive, but you are standing right on the border of two vastly different zodiac signs. The texts refer to this specific placement as a sandhi.
What's a sandhi?
And
Yeah.
if we just avoid the dense academic terms for a second, a sandhi is basically a critical seam in the sky. It is a place where two completely different realities are stitched together.
It is an incredibly turbulent seam, too. This is not just a standard border between two signs. It is the terminal point of what are called the Deva stars.
The divine stars.
Right. The Deva stars represent our divine impulses. They are all about the expansion of light, social harmony, diplomacy, and the enjoyment of the material world. But when you reach the end of Vishaka, that entire Deva impulse just abruptly terminates.
You run out of road.
You completely run out of road. And you're forced into a steep, immediate descent into the Yama stars, which govern the very next constellation. The Yama stars represent the underworld energies.
Which is a huge tonal shift.
Massive.
Yeah.
They're ancestral, deeply transformative, and they deal with the regulation of the soul, processing heavy, inherited karma, and facing the ultimate end-of-life transformations.
I was trying to picture what that shift actually feels like in a person's lived experience. I mean, if we pull this out of the sky and apply it to an everyday physical reality, think about driving a vehicle and shifting the gears in your transmission.
That is a great way to look at it.
Right. Up until this point, you've been driving through Libra. That is like cruising along a perfectly paved highway in a smooth, high-speed overdrive.
Very comfortable.
Exactly, because Libra is diplomatic, it's balanced, it's focused on pleasant relationships. But then you hit this sandhi, this junction, and the paved road vanishes. You cannot take the terrain of Scorpio in high-speed overdrive.
No, you would completely lose control.
If you try, you will spin out immediately. You have to aggressively downshift and lock your transmission into a low-gear, heavy-torque four-wheel drive. That is the only mechanical way you're going to survive the steep, rugged, and treacherous emotional terrain that lies ahead in the Yama realm.
That physical shift captures the psychological reality perfectly. The individual is forced to abandon all the comfortable swaying, the pleasant indecision, and the desire to please everyone that really characterized the previous energies.
You can't be a people pleaser on a cliffside.
You really can't. You have to adopt a posture of absolute terrifying fixation. You cannot be diplomatic or worry about being liked when you are locked into four-wheel drive, trying to navigate a muddy, precarious terrain. You must be utterly, unapologetically focused on survival and transformation.
And the deities that rule this star embody that exact unapologetic tension. The texts describe Vishaka as being governed by a Deva Devanva.
A dual deity.
Yes, essentially a dual deity. Picture two entirely distinct heads sharing a single powerful body. We are talking about Indragni, the fusion of the god Indra and the god Agni.
This fusion is the absolute core of the internal friction anyone with this energy experiences. Let's break those two forces apart to understand what is happening inside the person. First, we have Indra,
The king.
the king of the gods. His entire psychological profile is constructed around material conquest, territorial dominance, and kingly status. He's the divine warrior, the one who wields the thunderbolt, the one who builds empires.
But the sources reveal a really striking detail about how Indra operates. He isn't just a confident, benevolent king. His drive is deeply rooted in a profound, almost relentless insecurity.
That is a critical point. Indra's psychology is one of perpetual threat assessment. High achievers often feel this exact same way. Indra operates with a logic that views any potential rival, anyone gaining even a little bit of power, as an existential threat to his throne.
Even if they aren't an active threat yet.
Exactly. He is entirely willing to strike down an enemy, even if that enemy is already crippled, weakened, or actively retreating. He will destroy them simply to ensure they never have the opportunity to regain their strength and challenge his dominion down the line. It's a highly offensive, hypervigilant, dominance-oriented ambition.
So you have that incredibly aggressive, outward-facing ambition occupying one half of the mind, and sharing the exact same body, pulling on the exact same nervous system is Agni. Agni is the god of fire, and he represents something entirely different. Agni is the fire of consciousness. He is sacrificial intelligence, rigorous discipline, absolute austerity, and profound purification.
The complete opposite of material accumulation.
Right. Agni is the force that wants to burn away the dross of lower passions, to strip away the ego, and to reveal pure spiritual truth.
Now, just sit with that for a moment. Imagine those two forces existing simultaneously within you, demanding equal attention. This is the extreme internal friction of Vishaka.
It's tearing the person in two directions.
It is the clash between Indra's offensive worldly ambition and Agni's insatiable quest for spiritual purification. The native feels an overwhelming, visceral drive to conquer the material world, to get the promotion, buy the house, achieve the luxury and status.
The Indra drive.
Yes. But simultaneously, they feel this burning purificatory fire inside them that says the promotion is meaningless, the house is an illusion, and they need to strip away their ego and seek absolute truth.
I can easily see how someone could feel like they are tearing themselves apart.
Yeah.
You have the CEO who suddenly wants to abandon the boardroom to live in a monastery. But the moment they get to the monastery, they start trying to organize the monks and take over the leadership structure.
Yes, exactly. They can't help it. It is a state of perpetual psychological tension. They cannot fully enjoy the material success because the spiritual fire is always critiquing it.
And they cannot fully surrender to the spiritual path because the kingly ambition demands tangible victories.
Precisely.
There's another layer to this dynamic that we have to discuss. Both Indra and Agni, despite all their radical differences, share one major thing in common: a relentless, unquenchable thirst for soma, which is the nectar of the gods.
The fuel for the fire.
Exactly. I was reading through the source material, and if we look at this through a modern practical lens, their ancient thirst for soma is basically an obsession with cosmic energy drinks.
That is a highly accurate, if slightly terrifying way to frame it.
It's true, though. You have these two incredibly powerful, conflicting forces inside one body, and they are both highly caffeinated. It creates this hyperactive, relentless drive to just keep going, keep pushing, keep consuming.
A drive that never shuts off.
Right. But functionally speaking, if you do not strictly manage that target fixation, this constant energy drink fueling of Indragni leads to a very predictable outcome. It leads to a zombie-like stat of total burnout.
Complete exhaustion.
The internal fire simply runs out of fuel and starts consuming the physical vessel itself.
It is the adrenal fatigue of the soul. That burnout is a very real, very dangerous possibility for this energy. Because Agni, The fire is never truly satiated.
Fire doesn't have a limit.
No, fire doesn't reach a certain size and say, well, I have enough. It always wants to consume more. Because of this, the native often focuses entirely on what they lack rather than what they possess.
The empty space.
Right. It doesn't matter how much material territory Indra manages to conquer. The fire looks at what hasn't been conquered yet. This creates a perpetual state of discontent.
So how does all of this internal chaos actually manifest when a person tries to build a life? This leads us perfectly into the specific power, or the Shakti, of this star. It is called Vipana Shakti.
The power to cultivate.
Yes, this is defined as the power to achieve and make manifest through cultivation and harvesting.
The defining word in that definition is cultivation. The texts categorize Vishaka inherently as an agricultural star.
Which means planting seeds.
Yes. What this tells you, unequivocally, is that success under this energy is never, ever an overnight stroke of luck. It is not a sudden viral moment or a random lottery win.
It's not a shortcut.
Not at all. It requires a grueling, extensive, often painful period of sowing. The native must labor in the dirt, plant the seeds, and endure a very long period of waiting and tending before they ever experience the triumphant return and actually reap the harvest of their efforts.
Delayed gratification is incredibly difficult, especially for someone running on the hyperactive energy we just talked about. To really understand the physical mechanism of this Vipana Shakti, think about winding up the heavy mainspring of an antique mechanical clock.
Oh, that is a perfect mechanical comparison.
We've all seen those old clocks where you have to insert a key and turn it against immense resistance. Vipana Shakti operates just like that. You go through a long, slow, highly repetitive period of applying tension and effort.
Turning that key over and over.
Exactly. That turning of the key is the sewing phase. And while you are turning that key, applying all that physical tension, it looks and feels like absolutely nothing is happening.
The clock isn't ticking faster.
Right. The hands of the clock aren't racing forward. You aren't seeing immediate results from your effort. But what you are actually doing is storing up a massive amount of kinetic energy.
Deep inside the mechanism.
And when that long period of cultivation is finally complete, that stored energy releases into a powerful, sustained, and completely relentless momentum. That momentum is the harvest.
That slow building of mechanical tension perfectly mirrors the life path of the Vishaka native. Because they have to endure that long, winding phase, they often face what appears to be a series of lost battles early in their lives.
They see everyone else winning.
Exactly. They watch other people succeed quickly while they're still just turning the key, storing that kinetic tension. But because of that rigorous, unglamorous cultivation, they slowly embody the spirit of the ultimate survivor.
They build resilience.
Incredible resilience. They may be beaten down repeatedly, but they are always the last person standing when the dust clears. Their success typically arrives much later in life, and when it does, it is built on an unbreakable foundation of sustained effort that overnight successes simply do not have.
I want to look at the visual architecture the sources use to represent all of this, because the symbols bring this entire psychological profile to life.
The symbols are deeply revealing.
There are two primary symbols for Vishaka. The first one is the triumphal archway, or a decorated gateway. Now, on the surface, an archway decorated with leaves looks like a very straightforward, happy symbol.
It looks like a victory lap.
Right. It looks like victory, celebration, and arriving at the finish line.
It looks that way, yes, but it actually holds a deep, almost cruel psychological paradox.
How so?
The archway definitely represents milestones, conquests, and passing successfully from one stage of life to another. But think about the physical, geographical reality of an archway. It isn't a closed room.
It's an opening.
Exactly. When you finally endure all that cultivation, reach the archway, and step through those gates, what do you immediately see on the other side?
You just see another road stretching out in front of you?
Precisely. Passing through one gate only reveals another gate in the distance. The finish line is an illusion. This perfectly illustrates the natives' endless drive and their divine discontent.
Because they can never just stop and rest.
Never. For the materialist driven by Indra, it means no amount of wealth or status is ever enough. There's always a larger company to acquire, another corporate ladder to climb, another enemy to outmaneuver.
And for the spiritual side?
For the spiritualist driven by Agni, it represents the journey through the chakras, or levels of consciousness. You spend years mastering one level of meditation, only to pass through that gate and realize the next, even harder initiation awaits you.
The work is never done.
They are never truly satisfied, because the journey of purpose is infinite.
The second symbol provided in the texts is the potter's wheel, and I think this is such a profound, grounded image for dealing with the internal reality of this star.
It is incredibly revealing about how to actually survive this energy. Picture a potter's wheel in full, rapid motion. The outer clay, which represents your external life, your career, your relationships, your daily responsibilities,
All the moving parts.
all of it. That outer clay is constantly being spun, molded, and violently shaped by chaos, external motion, and circumstances completely outside your control. It is highly active.
It's pure turbulence.
In philosophical terms, we call this active, dizzying blur of daily demands, the rajasic forces of the world. It is pure motion.
Okay, but what about the center?
That is the key. The absolute center of that wheel, the tiny pinpoint axis that the entire mass spins around, must remain entirely stationary.
It has to be grounded.
If we use the philosophical term, that center must be tamasic, which in this context means a heavy, stubborn, absolute stillness.
So the outside is a blur of motion, but the inside is an anchor.
Exactly. Surviving the Vishaka energy requires finding that immovable, stationary core within yourself while the entire world spins violently around you.
What happens if you lose that center?
If you allow your core, your sense of self, to be pulled into the centrifugal spin of the outer clay, if you get caught up in the endless pursuit of Indra's material conquests and start reacting to every blur of motion, you will be thrown off the wheel entirely.
You just fly apart.
You will shatter. You must learn to observe the violent shaping of your external life from a place of absolute internal stillness.
That is a profound challenge. And as we look ahead to what happens when this intense heavenly tension finally crashes down into the earthly plane, the symbols change drastically.
They shift from objects to predators.
Yes. We leave the victorious archways and the spinning wheels behind.
When we transition across that sandhi and descend into the impending emotional intensity of Scorpio, we encounter the animal symbol of Vishaka. We encounter the tiger.
Consider the archetype of the tiger in the wild. It is fiercely, aggressively territorial.
Highly protective of its domain.
It possesses night vision, allowing it to see deep into the darkness, perceiving hidden threats and raw truths that others simply cannot see.
It sees what is hidden in the Yama realm.
And perhaps most importantly, the tiger rests for 80% of its time. It lies perfectly still in the shadows, preserving all of its immense, terrifying kinetic energy for a single, fatal, uncompromising strike. So, as you sit here in the quiet of this cafe, listening to the pages turn and sipping your tea, you have to ask yourself, how will you protect your stationary center when the tiger inevitably awakens in the dark?